Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z Martin, and today we are talking about haunted memories. The boys sure fought a lot of ghosts in their days on Supernatural, but the Winchesters especially were haunted by more than ghosts, a lot of memories. So let's talk about how that works and what they might have possibly done differently and what we can learn from them. But first, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Michelle.
Hi everyone, Michelle Crowley. I am a former professor of pop culture and communication at Northern Kentucky University, and I have been a fan of Supernatural steady on since 2018.
Very good. Mandy.
Hi, my name is Mandy Taylor. I am a former English lecturer at California State University, San Bernardino, and an instructional designer there at this time. I am also a co-editor of the collection Death and Supernatural Critical Essays. I have been a fan of Supernatural since season 8 and binged the first 7 seasons in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month. They all kind of blur, but I love them and still watch, and it's one of my comfort shows despite all of the things that go on, or maybe because of all the things that happen.
Absolutely. And I'm Gail Z Martin and Morgan Price. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but all my modern worlds are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. I fell in love with Supernatural, pardon me, halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months, so I'd be ready for the start of season 12, and fell down the rabbit hole and have never hit bottom or come back. So I'm just a happily obsessed fan. So in Supernatural, we start with the inciting incident of Mary's death, and while we only see her as a ghost in one episode, that situation kind of haunts the family, certainly haunts John in terms of what it does to his life and then what his choices do to the boy's life. And many things seem to haunt Sam and Dean, from choices to roads not taken to tragedies that they encounter, not only Mary's death, but along the way. Let's talk about hauntings, ghostly and mental, and go from there. Michelle?
Well, starting off in season 1, we can't miss Jess's death and how that plagues Sam throughout, well, definitely the first season and into the second season. And there's multiple times where he dreams of her, sees her. There's the one entire episode where he keeps seeing her like on the street corner or whatnot. I'm a little shaky on the details right now, but a lot of his actions really are influenced by her death. And it isn't until I think it's season 5 when Sam is confronted with Lucifer and essentially saying like, no, Sam, you weren't the reason she died. I was. Lucifer talking there. And you see that shift come over Sam where he says, oh, wow, I'm actually not responsible for my love's death. And definitely sets out a different course for him in the future, but he's really plagued by losing her. And even though it's never really fleshed out, it sounds like that Jess was the first person that he really confided in and really, really took to after leaving Dean and John and, running off to Stanford. And so he has this close person that he's, probably going to marry, never going to tell her about hunting, but still loves her all the same, and only to have her meet such a gruesome fate. He was running, essentially Sam was running away from John, and John was being plagued by Mary's death, and now look here, we got Sam doing the exact same thing with Jess's death.
Okay. Mandy?
Maybe along the same lines, but one of the things that struck me was Dean's memories of early Mary and John. He's old enough to remember that relationship, and was also kind of a comforter Mary, like when there are times of trouble and kind of thing. So Dean's memories are of caregiving as well, and that has shaped him through his entire life. Caregiving for his parents, caregiving for Sam, and seeing and remembering Sam as a little boy so many times, and making Sam the sacrifices he did for Sam, like when he was when Dean was in reform school and or at the camp, I can't remember with Jesse, but this idea of when Sam and John came up and he saw Sam with, you know, the undone buttons, unbuttoned sleeves and kind of the oversized shirt, and unknowing that he was the only one that could take care of Sam, and feeling that responsibility. And that also, especially when Sam dies at the end of in season 2 and All Hell Breaks Loose part 1, that's personal for many reasons for Dean, but in the sense that he failed to care for Sam and to take care of Sam, which was John's last charge to Dean, either, you know, save him or kill him, kind of thing. And that's the memories of those responsibilities drives a lot of Dean's actions, especially in the early going, but even arguably throughout the entire series. It's all about caring for Sam.
Well, and I'm thinking about the time that in season, all the way in season 12, when Dean confronts Mary in her head after the men of letters have really messed with her, and he's now hooked them up with that machine to go in after her and try to bring her out of her, you know, self-induced kind of coma. And he confronts her, and he tells her straight out all those ways that her death haunted him and changed his life, that he was never a child, that he had to grow up too fast, that he had to take care of Sam, which wasn't fair to him at that age. And so he kind of gets it all off his chest there in terms of confronting the ghosts of his mother, which is a usual supernatural hall of mirrors. He's in her head, confronting her in her head about her kind of haunting him over the years. Only supernatural can pull something like that off. But there's a real moment there for Dean of actually putting this resentment into words and saying straight out loud, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that her death ruined everything for everybody, and her deal led to her death. So yeah, that was definitely a confront your ghosts moment, even though it comes kind of late in the season. All of our, you know, not only Sam and Dean and John, but many other characters are kind of haunted by the past, by their poor choices, by their fears, aside from real ghosts. What are some others that come to mind? Michelle?
One that really comes to mind is Charlie, and we see some of her past come out when we first meet the character. And you know, we know that she's a hacker, and we know that, you know, Charlie Bradbury is not her real name, or at least that's heavily implied. But as we get to know her further and further in the seasons, seeing that, you know, the guilt that she carries for her parents' death. And I think I'm getting this right, that it's her, she was being picked up from a slumber party and her parents were hit by a car and or drunk driver, and she blamed herself for that, for you know, that really set her on the path of running away and constantly being on the run, picking up a new name, and just kind of leaving her life behind. And I always find it funny how she was the one that was like funneling money from certain people into, you know, caring for you know, the people that she cares about. And it was her sister, correct, that was in the hospital, and she was funneling the money to keep alive.
I think it was her mother.
So, you know, all of her on the run choices. And I wonder if that also has a little bit to do with, I mean, and Supernatural's on this kind of limb of, I wonder if it actually played into Charlie discovering her sexuality. of, being on her own and maybe not feeling the constraints of a family. She felt more comfortable in order to, come out as a lesbian and or bisexual, or her chosen designation. And so that might be one way that her past, her haunting past, maybe it did a little bit of good for her. But at the same time, seeing her on the run, seeing her become that magnificent hacker that she did, and then once the mother passed on, then she left and went to Oz and had a very different life. And so those, those sorts of choices that she was making in order to stay and not, I don't know, take the big grand adventures maybe that she now knows about with Sam and Dean, she was then able to be released from those sorts of, I don't know, responsibilities, and then went off and had her adventures in Oz and all her hunter life that she was able to embrace afterwards.
Mhm. Mandy.
One that comes to mind is Rowena as well, being haunted by the past of rejection, really, and all of the things that she had done to try to get people to accept her, to grow her magic, to just be somebody that people would take seriously. And also in that the rejection, not her rejection, but the relationship with her and Crowley, and the dynamic of trying to of not really being motherly, but also being constrained by some of those obligations, both in the past and current when they're reunited, and kind of navigating that dynamic until Crowley's actual death, and then her ascension or condescension, however you want to put it, as she becomes the Queen of Hell later in the series. But she always looked to belong and to be accepted. And I think part of that was she never really accepted who she was. And so, haunted by a self-rejection, she searches for connections where she maintains or increases power, always looking to kind of find the deal that will get her the most freedom or advantage, and another way to look at it. So she's always haunted, and we see that particularly with Oscar, when he's brought back into the scene as the one that she loves and has to sacrifice in order to break the mark and release the darkness, which is a different section we could go to at some point. But the idea of the women being as haunted as the men, we don't really see them developed as well as their side characters. But I think that's one thing to look into. Another would be Bobby with his wife. And when she comes back in Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, and he's remembering all the things that he, their happy life until she was possessed and having to kill her. And she says that she doesn't remember, but confesses to Dean that she does. But she won't tell Bobby because her job is to give him peace and, things like that. And so she's as haunted as Bobby is, and Bobby is haunted by not knowing if she remembers, and she's haunted by her remembering, and then Bobby again having to kill her again, and going through that, one more time, and just re-experiencing what good he could while remembering all of the things. It's this weird, not weird, this tragic cycle of you had it for a little bit, but it can't end well because of the circumstances. So.
Well, and with Bobby also, Bobby's past haunted him in terms of his abusive father and the marriage he saw that his parents had, and his choice not to have children, which then created trouble with him and Karen, because the night before she was possessed, they fought over having children, and he didn't want to continue the cycle. And so they were having marital trouble because the past haunted Bobby, and he couldn't see a way out of learning to be a better father except to not be a father. And then Sam and Dean come into the picture, and as he confronts the ghosts of the mental ghosts of his father, he says he raised two boys and they grew up to be heroes. And so he claimed them as his own. And another chance there to confront those ghosts that were haunting him that had reduced his whole life, because they made him, those memories made him feel like he didn't have as many choices as he actually did, um, and caused other problems. So yeah, definitely Bobby was among the haunted people. And we've kind of glossed over John, but um, John was raised by, um, his father disappeared when he was young. We don't know in the original series how his mother took that. Now, in the AU of the Winchesters, Millie does fine, and she runs the garage, and she's a very strong, independent um, mother. But we don't know in canon whether she dealt with that absence very well at all, and what hardships. There certainly must have been some that it caused for the family. And so John's got that trauma haunting him. He does marry, then his wife's killed in this gruesome, awful way. And he is so plagued by that, that obsession and revenge become his whole purpose in life, to the detriment of raising his small children. So the cycle goes on with this haunting of the past, confronting that past doesn't happen. He doesn't really get to have closure with Mary until we get to Lebanon, where two people who are out of their time periods get a chance to actually say what they never got to say in their regular lives. And so, yeah, definitely haunted by the past that just kept repeating itself. Back to you, Michelle.
Along those same lines, I think we can talk about John's relationship with Adam as a way to, I don't know, potentially maybe make up for the downfalls that he saw with his relationship with Sam and Dean. So more than likely, Adam was an unplanned addition to his world. And so, and he knew full well that he was not being the good enough father that he could be to Sam and Dean. And part of that could be because he's being plagued by Mary's death. So every time he sees Sam, he thinks of Mary. Every time he sees Dean, he thinks of Mary. But now there's this new child involved. And that's when he says, yeah, we went to a baseball game, and he, would send me money on their birthdays and blah, blah, blah. And so almost Adam is John's way of running away from the haunting of Mary's death, and trying to turn over a new leaf, or trying to do it right the second time around. And obviously, though, we find out that John really wasn't the poster of great father with Adam, but he was still trying to make up for the shortcomings that he had with Sam and Dean.
Mm-hmm. Mandy?
I'm going to switch back to Bobby for just a little bit, if I can, about
Sure.
Bobby becoming a ghost himself, and haunting and trying to be helpful, but also understanding with his hunter background, he knows the options for ghosts. Like, he's, at some point, he's going to become, the spirit that, vengeful spirit, or something that he can't be controlled. And we see his kind of descent into that, as through the flask, and as he starts going after Dick Roman and avenging himself in some, and others in some ways, and just navigating being a ghost as well, kind of learning what it's about, and the boys trying to come to terms with Bobby's death, and then, oh, here he is, and we can talk to him, and understand kind of how that works, which foreshadows Kevin, and his death, and coming back as a ghost as well, and kind of what we learn about heaven and hell between Kevin and Bobby, as well. And then I'm very tangential sometimes, but with the idea of heaven and hell, when the boys are killed in Dark Side of the Moon and they go to heaven, in theory, and they replay their memories, kind of thing, or see good memories, and the stark difference of Sam's memories being happy without John and Dean, kind of this normalcy without hunting, without this pressure of whatever that life is, or the pressure of John specifically, perhaps. But Dean is devastated to realize that he's not part of Sam's happy memories for the most part. That's like, but you're not with me, or I'm not with you, is more the case, I think. Whereas Dean's happy memories tend to be with, with mom or with Sam around, and kind of also again in the caregiving aspect, being with his family. So that's kind of the haunting too, that the desired family unit is never complete in Supernatural, and even the semblance of it with Ben and Lisa for Dean, and Amelia a little bit with Sam, they're never truly complete. They can't stay there. There's always an impetus and a reason to leave, because they know what's out there and what will come for them. So that drives them too.
No, I stick by my headcanon that Zachariah messed with their memories and showed them something guaranteed to split them apart, which was that I don't think those were Sam's true memories. I don't think anything in the show supports those being Sam's true memories, but Zachariah was looking for a way to put a wedge between them, and that certainly did. So that's my headcanon, and I'm sticking to it. Somebody else who truly was haunted by the past was Nick. Nick's whole reason for saying yes to Lucifer, and then later for wanting Lucifer to come back, was the guilt and the anger over the murder of his wife and child. And he was never able to let that go. He was never able to grieve them to some healthy level of completion. He needed the vengeance of tracking down the killer. And I'm not sure we're ever completely certain that the guy he kills was actually the killer. He certainly believes that the guy was, and he might have been, but evidence is kind of murky. But he needs that closure, and he needs the power that being Lucifer's vessel gives him to fill that emptiness from the death. So yeah, he wears his wedding ring the entire time as Lucifer, almost like a talisman of the loss. So if you wanted a haunted object that keeps that loss fresh in mind, it's that wedding ring that Nick and Lucifer wear the entire time. And so that's kind of interesting that Lucifer's vessel is very much haunted by the memories of the past and can't let them go. Back to you, Michelle.
Along those lines, I think we can also then talk about Lucifer and really any of the archangels, because they definitely have their share of hauntings, and it comes back to Chuck just getting out of there. And Lucifer specifically, because he was so harshly wronged by Chuck and then Michael and everyone kind of teaming up on him. And we even see it when Lucifer and Michael finally battle it out. It's obviously Lucifer's on the losing side. And so we never get to see him have any kind of closure with, well, first off, my dad turned his back on me, then my brothers locked me away. And he, even though he's our villain and he's still like the true villain, I never saw his story as a redemption story at all. But what we see, a lot of his actions still being driven even up through the end, and even with that part in season 16 when they were trying to Nick was trying to bring Lucifer back from the empty. And it's just so much unfulfilledness is just, Lucifer's just swimming in it. And so he's got this absolutely unfulfilled urges within him, and he can't get a break. He can't catch a break. And it's really driving his character development, his plot arcs, his everything. And then still at the end, he ends up unsatisfied again, because again, Lucifer's left stuck there in the empty and not, able to talk to a now mortal Chuck, or, duke it out with the new god on the street. And we, I guess it continues along with the good versus evil storyline. Evil can't triumph in this situation, but yeah, there's just that little bit of us. It's like, man, he just can't catch a break.
Mm-hmm. Mandy?
Yeah, I was thinking too, and talking about Lucifer kind of being this unfulfilled, and even the vessel keeping the talisman. We know Sam is then the perfect vessel, or is touted as the perfect vessel for Lucifer. So that suggests something as well of Sam's whole life leading up to that, and kind of the haunting and the brokenness that Sam has experienced to enable that vessel, kind of thing. Maybe we could argue, yes, he was created for that, but we're created through our experiences. So Sam had to go through specific things and different things, and partly why I call it his Gollum Smeagol moment, where Lucifer is talking to him in the mirror of like, let's, here's your greatest hits, all these people that you thought were just people.
Oops, she froze. We'll come back to her. I'm going to jump in and say that Lisa and Amelia were both haunted in a way by the ghosts that Sam and Dean were haunted by. Lisa, I think we all knew that Lisa and Dean were never going to have a really solid long-term relationship, because whether Sam was alive or dead, Dean really belonged to him first. So she tells Dean that she knew as soon as Sam walked in the door that it was over, because he was never going to stay. He was never going to pick her over Sam. And while he was with her, he was so devastated by, she's had a power outage. He was so devastated by Sam's death, and not even a regular death, but leaping into the cage with Lucifer to save the world is like uber traumatic. So Dean was definitely haunted the entire way through his relationship with Lisa. And I think the same was very true with Sam and Amelia. Sam's left completely by himself after the explosion at Dick Roman Enterprises. Crowley even taunts him about, now you're completely on your own. Takes Kevin, disappears, refuses to answer any summons from Sam. Bobby's dead. Their friends are all gone. He's lost. He is completely haunted. There's got to be guilt and grief and everything else going on there. And so he tries to find a normal life, but she's haunted by what she believes is her husband's death, and he's haunted by Dean's disappearance and presumed death. Not a good way to start a relationship. So again, a doomed relationship, because everybody involved is really still haunted by the ghosts of the past. Michelle?
Mandy said in the chat that she may be able to continue, but just without camera. And we left her her previous thought unresolved. So turn the floor back over to Mandy and let her finish where she left off.
Can you remind me what you heard last? I'm sorry, it cut off me mid-sentence, so I'm not sure exactly what I was saying. So I think I was talking about Sam and it being unresolved, and the vessel of Lucifer. And so the mirror moment, and it's kind of here are the people that you thought were just people, but actually they were demons. They were watching over you and kind of grooming you or keeping you on this path to do what I needed you to do. So let's take some revenge. And Sam, he's like, Lucifer to Sam's like, you can't deny that, you're not wanting it a little bit, and how much better you will feel, not really, But that's part of the Luciferian promises, is you'll feel better if you let all of this rage and anger and darkness overtake you, at least momentarily. But it actually haunts Sam further, because he knows that even though those people were possessed, there are still people behind or within those demons, kind of thing. Like, he knows how demons work. So that's part of the haunting too, and which also reminded me of the witnesses and the boys being haunted by um, uh, the various, like Hendrickson comes back, and Nancy comes back after Lilith kills them, and they see all of these people that died because of them. In theory, it's like look what you did. You didn't save me. It's like, so now I'm going to come back and hurt you. And you have these physical manifestations of the people that they couldn't help. And how many times they have to witness things, like they can't save everyone. And so that burden is on them all the time, both Sam and Dean. And it's hard to say who really feels that the most. I think you could make an argument for either brother there. So.
Okay. Very good. Michelle?
Kind of marrying the two ideas, Gail, with you and Mandy, talking about the loss that we see after the explosion at Dick Roman Enterprises. So when we have Dean that's left in purgatory, and the friendship that he strikes up with Benny the vampire, and very unlike Dean, really, to kind of befriend. Still at this point, Dean was still very much kill, ask questions later, especially when it comes to monsters. And he strikes up this friendship, and he gets Benny's soul, puts it into his arm, and escapes from hell, then makes it his mission to go to Louisiana and put the soul back in Benny's body. So I think, kind of Mandy, along what you were saying, is that Dean's devotion to Benny, not saying that it's no kind of romantic relationship or anything. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Dean could not save Cass. And that was just a long list of people that Dean was not able to save. But he was able to save this one soul. Unfortunately, that soul happened to be a vampire, but he was finally able to do that. And so taking that lifetime of trauma and with everybody that he'd already lost, including, I think, a little bit of letting Sam down as well, because Dean knows that being away from Sam is not good for any of them, either of them. So he takes this one soul, and he really kind of attaches himself to it. You then see Sam on the other side of that once it becomes apparent who Benny is and the relationship there. And Dean's like, well, he's one dude and I saved him. And Sam's like, yeah, but he's a vampire. Like, he's a monster. We kill monsters. So there's still that, I guess, more character development was needed on Sam's side to see a little bit more of the human side of this monster. But Dean was already a step ahead of him and said, a win is a win. It doesn't matter if it's a monster or it's a human, a win is a win. So kind of to sum that up, getting back to Dean was actually able to save one person after a whole long line of folks that he just wasn't able to save, including Cass.
Okay. Mandy?
I think just continuing that a little bit, Dean as a doer, he has to do something. He has to take some kind of action, which goes all the way back to after John died, and Sam comes to Dean while Dean's fixing the Impala, and Sam's all ready to just like, we got to talk about this. Like, you're not grieving how I think you should grieve, is kind of what it boils down to. And Dean's like, what do you want me to do? There's nothing I can do except fix this car. And Sam walks away, and then Dean beats the ever-loving out of the Impala when Sam's out of view and out of earshot, with that impotent rage that, like, I can't do anything except this, and let me take out my frustration and anger on this representation of my father, because I can't yell at Dad, it's not fair to yell at Sam, and I know that. It's like he's still trying to care for Sam in that way, to enclose. And I think the relationship with Benny is kind of this, like, that he needs somebody, he needs a companion of some sort that can fight the fight with him. It's like, so in the beginning, Sam tells him, like, well, you can hunt alone, you're fine, you can do it. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to. Which again circles back at the very end of the series. But this idea, like, if Dean finds a fellow fighter and makes that relationship, and they become brother-like, there's a very close relationship there. Because going through purgatory and the camaraderie of battle and saving your life and somebody else's life, a brother in arms, that's an important relationship for Dean. He needs something like that. And the ability and possibility of caring for someone else. Because he doesn't look after himself all that well, but you give him somebody to take care of, completely different story.
Yeah. Well, and I think we also see that haunting of over responsibility in what is, and I never get this quite right, the Jinn episode, What Is and What Should Never Be, where what breaks him out of the Jinn spell is he starts seeing the ghosts of the people that aren't saved in this reality. He gets his happy life, but these people die, and the way they haunt him breaks through all of the Jinn's magic and poison and whatever he's got to keep Dean in thrall as he's slowly sapping his life force in his blood. That guilt and those hauntings are strong enough to convince Dean that he doesn't understand what's going on, but he knows this isn't the way it's supposed to be, and convince him with enough surety that he's willing to bet his life on it. And so in that sense, in that episode, the ghosts and their haunting proved to be the catalyst for him to get out of the spell, where most of the time they kind of pull the characters back into the generally unhealthy spell of their guilt and inferiority and feelings of insufficiency. Michelle?
So kind of piggybacking off of that, the episode of My Heart Will Go On with what's his name?
Balthazar?
Balthazar, thank you. Unsinking the Titanic. And there's the moment, kind of the crux of the episode, when the boys find out, oh, hey, if we go back to the way things were and resink the ship, Bobby loses Ellen, Joe's dead, and this whole other list of things that never happened ends up happening. And kind of like you said, that now we see them turn back to that unhealthy kind of pattern of which that we've become accustomed for the boys of living in, and they make that decision relatively very quickly, saying that the lives of many are worth the sacrifice of a few. And just kind of was thinking how that was interesting, as you were saying that the choices that even in this alternate world with the unsunk Titanic, we still see the same characteristics of Sam and Dean, even though entirely different circumstances that have surrounded their lives. So then it's kind of like, what sort of what's percolating underneath Sam and Dean's minds at that point, and what kind of trauma had they seen in the previous, or in the alternative world, versus how it came across in the world that we were accustomed to.
Yeah, understanding that if these characters had all been well adjusted, the series would have been a lot shorter, because there wouldn't have been as many forced errors and bad decisions. But that's what we love about the show. Mandy?
Hey, you're talking about the djinn and how Dean was able to recognize some of the things because he saw these ghosts. Made me think of the exchange between Dean, Sam, and John is possessed by Azazel, and how John tells Dean, "I'm so proud of you for doing these things," and you know when Dean had used a bullet from the Colt and all these things, and Dean's like, "Wait, he'd be furious. He wouldn't be happy with me." And it's like, what did you go through to realize that your father being proud of you is actually an exception and not something that you would hear often or often enough to see it as actual praise? And so Dean recognizes, that's not my dad because of potentially traumatic and not necessarily physical, but just the pressure that they're all under to be as soldiers and to be tactical and strategic. And Dean recognizing that John would have seen fault in Dean's actions, um, and didn't, tipped him off. And so like, oh, so now, and having to then shoot his dad, or his dad's body, so to speak, and recognizing, oh, I need to take action here. And then John telling Dean to kill him, but he refuses, much as he refuses to kill Sam, and to be haunted by you're going to save your brother or kill your brother, or you need to, for a good portion of the series. And just remembering all the things in that exchange, as well as then Dean's time as a demon, Sam's time as soulless Sam, some other areas that I won't go too tangentially into, but just those different interactions made me think of that as well. Just these out of the norm and how you recognize what isn't actually your world is really interesting. And it could
Well,
be a haunting experience. Go ahead.
especially since John would have been angry with him for using that bullet to save Sam.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely on all of those. And Soulless Sam and Demon Dean both then created, because of their actions and their choices, more things to feel guilty about and to feel haunted about, because as we saw in Unforgiven, some of Sam's past from his soulless time starts to catch up with them and starts to pose a real threat to them. And Dean feels so much guilt over his time as a demon that just, laid even more things to be haunted about. Pardon me, real or metaphorically. But I also want to bring up Jody, because Jody got into the hunting life because a ghoul killed her husband and son. And so she goes from this small town sheriff who goes easy on the town drunk, aka Bobby, but doesn't really know anything about the supernatural, to being thrust in it through this traumatic personal loss, and kind of falls into hunter mode because she's lost her family. She understands now that there are bigger things, scarier things in the dark. And while it doesn't get mentioned often, we do see how that traumatic loss influences her, not only becoming a hunter, backing up the boys, but later on when she takes in Alex and Claire and the other girls to kind of recreate that family that she lost. And of course, all of them have their own traumatic backgrounds and their own hauntedness that influence their choices. Well, folks, believe it or not, we have once again blown through our time. So I want everybody to have a chance to say where people can find you online. And if you have a new, recent, or upcoming book, tell us about that too. Michelle?
You can find me on Twitter at preheatingprof. I don't access Twitter much right now for my mental health, but I'll always come back to it eventually. That's the only place you can find me online.
Okay. And Mandy?
I am also on Twitter, but not much. I'm at Elaisona, Elaisona. I also am working on a second compilation with my co-editor and friend Susan Nylander. We are working on a book, Women in Supernatural, Critical Essays, to go along with our book, Death and Supernatural. We are hoping to have that out in the next year or so. We're finalizing things in the next couple of months. So that's where I am. That's what's coming up.
Very exciting. And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. I'm on all the social media platforms under those names. If you spell them right, you'll find me. I also am a columnist for the Winchester Family Business Blog, and I run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook. But most of all, you can find me here on Continual. So thank you both so much for being with us today. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon. So we'll see you online.